Broadcasting on the internet airwaves from the great state of Minnesota, my name is Shaun and you're listening to The Shaun Tabatt Show. Today I'm speaking with Sue Badeau, and we're talking about her book, Are We There Yet? The Ultimate Road Trip, Adopting and Raising 22 Kids. Sue, it's great to meet you today. Thanks so much for being a part of this episode of Author Talks.
Thank you so much for having me here. I'm excited to be here.
Well, it might be worthwhile for us to start back at the beginning. So tell us how you and Hector got started, and was it always on your mind to have, I think the question says big, but we'll say huge family, really, in this case?
Well, that's a great question, and no, it was not on our mind or in our heart. We sure didn't think that we were going to have that kind of a family. We dated since high school. We were high school sweethearts. And even then, we sort of knew that there were children in the world that needed a home, and we thought, yeah, let's adopt someday when we get married. When we first got married, we came to the conclusion that our grand plan for life was to have two and adopt two. So we thought we'd have 4 children. On the book, you'll see there's the first picture is a picture of that little moment in time in our life when that's what we had. But clearly God had other plans for us, and it was especially after we learned about the needs of not only all children in foster care, but particularly older children and sibling groups, and how they so often get separated. And so as we learned about those things, our family began to grow, and the number, we never had a set number in mind, but we always were open to what God had in store for us.
So obviously you didn't start out with 22 kids, and like you said, it just continued to grow through the years. Was there ever a time when you had all 22 kids in the house at one time?
Not living there full time. We've certainly had them all there for holidays and things, but we had 19 altogether all at once. And then we lived in Vermont. We were getting ready to make a big move to Philadelphia. And the 3 oldest of those 19, they were ready to kind of start their own independent lives. They were young adults. One was getting married. So they decided they wanted to stay in Vermont, and they moved into their own apartments. And so we did move with 16. We adopted our last 3 down there, so we again had 19. So 19 was the biggest number we had at one time.
And you just mentioned that you adopted a few more children before or shortly after you moved there. What are the ages of the kids you have at home right now?
Well, our youngest son is soon to turn 23, and our oldest son is soon to turn 44, so that's the overall span. And so a few months ago, I would have told you we had no children left at home. Currently, we have 2 of our adult children in their 20s who have moved back home after having been out independently for a while. And we actually have 2 of our young adult grandchildren, again in their early 20s, who are also living with us. So those 4 are with us, but everyone else is living in some degree of independence. We often are called upon to be very active in their lives, but many of them live around the corner, but they do have their own place.
Well, I think one of the unique things about your story is that you and Hector made some decisions that a lot of folks wouldn't make, that you took it, had a place in your heart for some boys with really severe disabilities, and some that you knew going into it that they wouldn't even live to adulthood. So a lot of people would just go, that's a hopeless situation, and why would we bring that upon our family? But it sounds like you guys had a heart that was very different.
Well, we certainly never felt it was hopeless. We did have a heart for all children, but there was a time when we had 10 or 12 when we thought children with that level of disability wasn't really what we were called to do. In fact, we even remember telling the Lord we could never do that. One lesson we've learned over the years is don't ever say that. Because whatever we said we could never do, we got a chance to do. And the first time we were called and asked to adopt a child with shaken baby syndrome, our son Dylan, who had a shortened life expectancy, very severe disabilities, would probably never develop past a 6-month-old infant stage of sort of brain development, blind, cerebral palsy. That's his list of diagnoses, but that's not Dylan. Dylan was a delightful child that would just make you smile, make you laugh. He could hear even though he couldn't see. He loved music. Everyone in the family just adored him. He did pass away. He lived, however, to be 24, which was longer than many expected. And during those years, he just enriched our family life so much. But it was something we didn't think we could do. And then, we really stretched ourselves, and we're so thankful that we did.
I think one of the things folks will think about when they see a title with the words 22 kids is logistically, practically, what did it look like for a household of that size to function regularly, where the dishes get washed, the clothes get folded, and everything is running pretty tightly and well. Tell us about how that worked for you guys.
Well, things did run pretty tightly. We were pretty organized, but never as tightly as sometimes it would appear on when you see a TV show.
What?
Let's put it that way. We had an interesting family dynamic. My husband actually was the full-time at-home parent, and I, in addition to being a parent, also had a job outside of the home. Okay. So I was the one that could sort of mastermind the organizational strategies, the laundry charts, and the menus. But he was the one that implemented them, and he was really great about that. Adults adore him, but yet he's very firm. A friend of ours once over the years called him a benevolent sergeant. So we had color-coded charts. We had all kids had chores. There was a period of time when my husband had to get up at 4 every morning so he could have a little quiet time to himself before the onslaught of kids getting up. We'd make as many as 16 school lunches on any given morning. So it was challenging. It was hard. We were ready to fall into bed at the end of the day. But by being organized and by holding the kids accountable, they had responsibilities. They had chores, but we made them fun. We, had prizes for the certain things, and we just did things over the years to make family life as fun as possible while also teaching skills and responsibility.
Now, obviously, there are a lot of interesting challenges that come with having 22 children. I have soon-to-be 8 children, and every day is an adventure. But broadly speaking, what are some of the challenges people really should be aware of if they're going to have a large family, or two, if they're going to be adopting children and expanding their home, and what's thankfully so becoming more normal? I'm seeing it a lot more in all of my church circles. So what are some of the challenges, though, that people really need to be aware of as they think about this?
I'm really glad you asked that, because that really gets down to the purpose of why we even wrote the book. We didn't want it to be a glossed-over Fantasyland kind of story. Even though our children bring us much joy, we don't regret one moment. Our children, they've experienced trauma before they even come into our life. They've experienced separation from birth family, multiple foster families, abuse, neglect, you name it, as well as the disabilities that many of them have. So God rarely just chooses to heal by a sudden sort of lightning bolt miracle. He does that sometimes, but that's not the usual. It's more of the 40 years in the wilderness approach. And so there were tough times, and there were times of really being in the wilderness and really not being sure, are we doing the right thing with this particular child? We faced teen pregnancy, we faced kids with addiction issues, among other things. And we had to constantly be really grappling with God, and are we doing the right thing, and are we on the right track? And so the biggest, if I had to answer what's the biggest challenge, it was not having control. I didn't want it to go like this. And come on, God, this is the road I want to be on. So not having always control, but yet continuing to have that unconditional love and continuing to have that faith and hope that the end of the story isn't written yet. And it's still, even though our book is over, the end of the story isn't over for our children or ourselves. And it's being able to really hold fast to that even when you go through those really difficult valleys, which will happen. We're not rescuing children. One of the people who read our book in advance said, we weren't rescuing children, we were multiplying love. And that's how we like to, they bring us as much as we bring them, but you're going to walk together on some pretty hard roads, and you have to be prepared to be in it for the long haul.
I think one of the things that you may also want to address is related to the church and adoption and foster care. I go to a small sub-200 people church, yet we have one family who I think has adopted 8 or 10 children out of the foster care system, a lot of sibling pairs, and just a lot of people are doing foster care and foster adoptions, which is amazing. I think somebody had a vision for it, which it multiplied within the church that we're a part of. But, not everybody's going to be called to radical adoptions or taking on some of the burdens and challenges that you and your husband felt called to. But at the same time, if they don't feel called to do those sorts of things, what are some of the things that they could do to really support and lift up the families who have a burden for taking on these sorts of, call it ministry, expanding, growing the love in their family, whatever you want to call it. It's important, it's happening, but as Christians, we need to support our brothers and sisters who are moving in this direction. So what would be your advice for us and for those folks who are doing the adopting too?
That's such an important issue that rarely gets talked about. And one we found, we had amazing friends and church members over the years who loved us and cared for us, but did not know how to really support us. So that's one of the things we are passionate about, is exactly what you just asked, how to help people in the church and the community to come alongside, to walk alongside, to be a support. And one thing really is to learn, because the typical things that you have to do to support a family whose child was born into that family and doesn't have any special needs or circumstances can be very different than what it takes to support a family going through the things we've gone through. So it's not intuitive, it's not instinctive, it's not something you're just going to know. So be open to asking, what can I do to help you, instead of just assuming. But some of the things that come to mind, one is that parents in these families very rarely get a break, and they need time to support their own marriage, their own life as an individual. So giving the parents a break, saying, how can I give you a break? How can I come and watch the kids for a while? Will it take 3 or 4 of us to do that? That's fine. Let's put it together, make it happen. So giving parents a break is probably one of the most important things. A second is making sure the children are genuinely welcome in the church. So that may mean adjusting your Sunday school program. We once were in a church that said, we can't accommodate, sorry, that child, his behavior, you'll just have to keep him out of Sunday school. Well, that's really not okay. It may mean adjusting your choir program or your church retreats or camp or whatever else you offer for children. How can you genuinely welcome these children? And then a third thing is help the parents even with the needs of the other children. They may have adopted kids with special needs, and they may have 2 or 3 other kids with no special needs who can kind of feel left to the side when all the attention is. So do they need help getting to Little League? Do they need help, just being able to go to summer camp or something that the parents right now can't focus on because they're dealing with medical issues or special ed issues at school of this other child that's wrapping up all their time or financial resources? So being aware of the other children. So those 3 areas, learning, supporting the parents, getting a break, genuinely incorporating the children in your church ministries up and down and throughout, and not forgetting the other children. That was 4 things, not 3. Anyway, I think those are the key highlights of what a church community can do.
Now, if you had to sum it up in just a few sentences, when folks finish reading the book, what are really the takeaways or the action items that you hope they're going to come away with at the end?
I think it goes in 2 categories. For people who think, maybe I could do this, not necessarily 22, but 1, 2. I'd like them to see that it's possible, that there's lots of hope, but that there's hard work and there's challenges, and you are going to need support, and have a realistic picture, but to be able to say, I could do this, and that it will inspire and encourage. On the other hand, for people for whom this isn't what it will inspire them to do, I hope it will help them see, I can do something more than I ever thought I could. Whatever direction God is calling me, if I put those nevers in place, if I said I can't really do that, that by reading this story, they will also say, God, what is it you want me to do more of, or something beyond what I expected I could do? We really hope that it will lead people to challenge themselves and say, is there something that I could do beyond what I think I'm capable of, and really leave it in God's hands so he can take them on that same sort of wild ride. That's why we titled the book, Are We There Yet? We took our kids on lots of road trips, and they would always ask, are we there yet? And we keep asking God that, and he keeps saying, not yet.
Well, if folks are interested in finding out more about you and your husband and more information on the book, where's the best place for them to try to connect with you on the web?
I would say to come to my website, SueBadeau.com, SueBadeau.com, because I do have a blog and information about the book, of course, and a link to a separate website that has more of our family pictures and story as well. But come there first, and then you can find everything you need.
All right. Well, Sue, thanks so much for sharing with us today about your book, Are We There Yet? It's been a great pleasure speaking with you, and it was a good pleasure to have you on this episode of Author Talks.
It was great chatting with you as well, and great with your 8 kids, too. That's awesome.
Thank you.
And that's all for this episode of The Shaun Tabatt Show. If you have a question, comment, or suggestion, you can connect with me via email using show@shauntabatt.com. Be sure to follow me on Twitter, where I go by the Twitter handle @stabatt. And if you enjoy the show, head on over to iTunes and leave us a review. Until next time, this is your host, Shaun Tabatt, signing off.